who knows? Zach Wilson, comes alive.
Yeah. Any other questions on the field? Back to you.
Yeah, hi. So, what's your system for storing and organizing replays? I've been working a lot of that.
Yeah.
And let's say, for example, this is the first conversion since in Pittsburgh since like 2003 or whatever. Like, how do you pull something like that? Or is there any people who have that replay?
So replays are, obviously they're huge. There's super slow-mo replays, replays from first, second. So there's a whole tribe of replay machines. So, and there's people who operate these EVS machines, and there's an ISO producer who's a production person who orchestrates essentially what's the best look at whether it's a touchdown, penalty, injury, whatever it might be. So there's that. It's interesting you bring this up because we didn't even request it, but last week when Rodgers went down, there were a couple of people in the truck, and I had forgotten, honestly, I had to Google it. Vinny Testaverde was a Jet, and he was starting quarterback for the Jets. I can't remember the year, but in his, might have been his first game as a Jet or first game in New York, he tore his Achilles. And so we didn't have that video, but we can get on the phone and get it and get it to the truck and roll it back in. So there's all sorts of packages that are built. Last week there was a package, I think it eventually got it late in the game. Last year, Stephon Diggs got into it a little bit with Josh Allen on the sideline. I think it was in a playoff game with the Bengals that they lost. Fast forward to last week, there was much more harmony between Stephon Diggs and Josh Allen, even though Josh Allen had 3 interceptions last week. So we have that package built. So there's a lot of contextual things built, but there's things that happen that if we need to get it. We have somebody in Bristol who can grab it, get on the phone, and like, hey, can we get it fed to us, and away we go.
So this speaks to the production plan. Everybody having a role in the storytelling, entertainment value of each telecast.
Absolutely, yeah. So there's PAs, APs, but Steve Ackles, who produces it, ultimately he's taking a look at everything and also determining what's going to likely get in. There is stuff that we'll produce that won't get in tonight, but that's live TV, so it happens.
So one quick question as a follow-up. Game's over. You guys do a post-game analysis, anatomy, autopsy to see what went well, what didn't go well?
Yeah, so the game ends, and the first thing Joe and Troy will be live with Scott Van Pelt after the game. So they'll break down the game, so on and so forth. And then by Tuesday, just about everybody will be watching the game for the previous night. So, and then all the notes are formed, and we know like where we can get better coming off week one. We talked a little bit about it in the production meeting before I came over here. So yeah, I mean, like last week we couldn't get into it. It's simple things like maybe this week we can, depending on the flow of the game. I like to hear Troy and Joe. I like to get their take on yesterday in the NFL. Like I want to hear their take on the Giants comeback or the Patriots are 0-2. I think
Or how bad the Bears are?
Or the Bears. I think there's value in that to fans watching at home. They want to hear from Troy and Joe on the lead, not just our game. So that's just one small thing. And again, it might be a graphic at the end of the day, right? But here's three of Troy's storylines that he wants to talk to. But again, I would tell you, like, they're so engaged, Troy and Joe, they're so engaged in the process that it's like, it's easy. They make it so easy. It's great. It's fun.
Any other questions on the floor?
Yeah. I know both of you are always looking for creative ways to engage. I know that both of you are always looking for creative ways to engage with fans or starting markets in new ways. What do you see on the horizon that is interesting? Like I know that
What's on the horizon to engage fans?
Yeah.
Either from a sponsorship, branding standpoint, production?
Well, I think you talked about it a little earlier tonight, having like the Manicast is great, right? Because that increases the audience. Because you have people that go watch the game, go over and watch the Manicast, but you have people that just watch the Manicast. So it brings a whole new, younger audience. And so alternative broadcasts, where they make sense and are complementary to the initial broadcast, are fun, and that's a great way to think about bringing in new fans and engaging and keeping them longer. Then outside of linear, social, ESPN, for instance, is not the number one sports brand. It's the number one brand on TikTok. Now, the content you see on TikTok is not necessarily highlights or anything. A lot
Is
of
your
that.
production team pushing out social media during the game, or is that a different department?
There's a social media department. We may suggest, or they may say, hey, you have to look at this particular play or whatever, which we probably do. But there's a whole social media team. But I mean, I think the other thing, like on the alternate broadcast, like when Manning's are on, we have K-Rod, which is Alex Rodriguez, Michael K on 8 Sunday night baseball games. We'll promote, like, at least the guests that are on the main broadcast, we'll promote the guests that are on the Manning cast or K-Rod, whatever it might be. Because like Sean said, we're not competing with one another. It's a total opposite. We're cueing the rating for both telecasting to one, hopefully big rating.
Dean has a question.
Yeah, Jeff, you said in earlier comments you were going to talk about career advice. Is that so important to this?
Yes.
How do these students become you all? And what advice do you have to them to take a track and do the right track? And I know it's about paying dues and things like that, but what advice would each of you three give to these students who are some of them ready to get into the market?
A little background on you guys, so 3 of you got 3.
Yeah. Sean, you want to start?
Sure. I mean, I got to ESPN because I worked at an agency called Tracy Locker in the Pepsi business there for 7 years. And had a guy who worked for me. He went over to a job at ABC. Called me one day and said, hey, there's this job at ESPN you might be interested in. And I was. So one thing I would tell you is networking. Get to know as many people as you can. Number 2, if you want to be in the sports industry, which I assume most of you want to, get a job. All right, you don't have, because your first job is not meant to be necessarily your career job or where you're going. Your first job is to develop your communication skills, critical thinking, interpersonal skills, and how to manage your time and how to meet deadline and all of that. That's what your first job is about, learning, getting skills that are applicable if you want to be in the sports industry down the road. So I would not, worry about not being in the sports industry out of the block. If that's what you want to do, you can get there. The sports industry is more expansive than ever before, so your time will come. So I think those are 2 important things, reading. And I don't mean just reading about, just read, right? I don't mean look at your phones and read. I mean, like, read a book, right? History, anything. Well, George Bodenheimer, who's a former president of ESPN, used to tell people that all the time. He reads, and if you, and I would suggest follow Greg Sankey, who's the commissioner of the SEC, really good guy. And just about every week, he posts the new book that he's reading, and some of them are really interesting, so I'd highly recommend that. Last but not least, I'd give you 2 pieces of advice. 1, always be humble and kind. I know I sound like Tim McGraw. I'm telling you, that will help you immensely. And the last thing is, when something goes wrong, the first thing you want to do is this before you do this. Because you always have some role in if something went wrong. And by the way, stuff's going to happen. And so you will get a lot of respect if you raise your hand and say, you know what, my bad, I own it. When you start pointing the finger at other people, that's where it goes bad.
All right, Mark.
I can talk for days on this one. I walked in the door August 1st, 88. I graduated from Olympia College in Central New York in May of 88. I had no job. When I first went to school, I thought I wanted to produce Wilderness Tonight. I started, on campus working on a TV station, a local news station, and on a college station. And I realized I had no real interest in covering politics or car crashes. I was a huge sports fan, so basically, what the hell am I doing covering news when I should be covering sports? So that's how it started. A few things, Sean, when humble and kind, it's so easy to be humble and kind, yet not everybody is. And taking the blame and just deflecting, and then the other piece of that is deflecting the credit. I never want to take credit for anything, nothing, 0. I just want everybody else on the crew, and I'm not just saying this, but it wasn't, even if it was my idea. No, it was his or her idea. They created it. No, go give them a pat on the back. So there's that. To me, it's passion. So if you really, really are into this, you better be passionate about it, and you better be ready to miss birthdays, weddings, anniversaries, working Christmas, working, you name it. You name the holiday, I've worked all of them. And it sometimes is darn hard working Thanksgiving. I always find that to be like the hardest one to work. Everybody's together, everything's closed, you're driving to work, like everything's closed, right? So to me, you just have to really want to do it and tell yourself that I'm gonna, if it's ESPN, I'm gonna go to Bristol, Connecticut. I don't know anybody, but I'm gonna meet people. I'm gonna just work hard and do my thing. And the last thing I'll say is, and I've told this, I went to Ithaca last year to meet the students for the first time in a long time. It was awesome because I was like now I'm looking at myself, from when I graduated, which was kind of scary, but it was true. You have to outwork the person next to you. I'm not the smartest guy. I don't have my master's. Ithaca is a very good college, but it's not Harvard. It's not LaSalle. But I'm again not the smartest guy, but I think I can outwork just about anybody. And there's a core group of us that did that and are still in Bristol. So to me, every time you think like you can't work any harder, you just like dig a hair deeper, and all of a sudden, you're working harder and you're cutting that, that Pirates highlight at 2:00 in the morning, so it meets at the spot in Sports Center. That's how it all starts. That's how it starts in Bristol. You're cutting highlights, you're doing graphics, you might be picking up the phone, the prompting shows, whatever it is. One thing leads to the next, one opportunity leads to another, so on and so forth. It's like, hey, this person's doing a hell of a job. But the only thing that I'll shut up.
No,
I told this to the students at Ithaca. Don't try to convince yourself that you're passionate about it. The business is not for everybody. And I don't want to, end it on a negative note, but I always think in Bristol that there's people coming out of school and it's their dream to work at ESPN. They are like, oh my God, I am here. This is unbelievable. And then they get their schedule and they're working till 4 in the morning. And it's like, okay, I wasn't counting on that. And they're hearing from their friends who work at Morgan Stanley who are inviting them down to New York for the weekend to go do this, that, and the other thing. And they're like, well, I'm working on the weekends. So, and meanwhile, the employee who's just out of school is told their parents obviously are thrilled. They're telling all their neighbors, they're telling everybody, my son or daughter works at ESPN. Oh my God, so on and so forth. And so I tend to think that sometimes when a person doesn't love it, that they don't want to go back and tell their parents or somebody else, like, it wasn't for me. But it's not for everybody. There's a certain nuttiness that goes into working in production. So again, you may not love it for the first 6 months, but give it time, because then something may click and you may be like, wow, this is freaking awesome. I'm doing this, I'm doing that. So, but just be passionate about it and be authentic, with your passion.
The only thing I could build on these sentiments, which are so excellent, the advice is so true, is don't be afraid to zig and zag. And what I mean by that is, I started in production for a little company in Philadelphia called Spectrum, which is now Comcast. But production wasn't for me, and I got into the sports marketing side and worked for the Phillies. And then I came over to the Cleveland Indians. And then I figured, I really want to do team sports the rest of my life. It was 25, 26, and back to the grind. Baseball is 6 months of the year. So if you have 52 weekends, 26 are gone, 13 at home. So it just wipes out the summer. So I decided to make a change and joined a sports marketing agency to work on the Miller Sports Group, which got me more into the marketing side, sponsorship side, which then led me to go work for Coca-Cola, which then led me back to my production roots, and I went to Turner Broadcasting, where I spent the last 18 years. But even at Turner Broadcasting, I was doing my first love, which was sports. I had a boss who said, I need a CMO for entertainment. I didn't know anything about entertainment. And I always considered entertainment the dark side, no offense. But there's entertainment in sports, but I'm talking about Hollywood entertainment, and that is the dark side. Anyways, I became the CMO for Turner and worked and learned something different. Don't be afraid to zigzag, don't be afraid to learn, because life is nothing but one big learning curve. And somewhere on that curve, you're gonna find a really good fit, and then you're gonna enjoy the heck out of it. So, any more questions? How we doing, Mike, on time?
Good.
Just tell me, good time, or just wrap it up?
Yeah, I'll give you one more thing. Everybody raise your right hand. Okay. Raise it a little higher. How come you didn't do that the first time?
Yeah.
You can always give a little more. Okay.
Well, I tell you what, you can't thank both Mark and Sean to be here. Literally, Mark is working today. He could be resting right now, but he came here to spend time with the students. The audience on camera, thank you for joining the center today for the first form of the fall semester. What a treat, what a treat. One question, Keith. One question, Keith. Who do you favor tonight?
I favor great, close overtime throw.
We are neutral at ESPN. We root for this thing called Nielsen.
Yes.
We want a great rating. That's
Come on in, Dean.
Well, I just wanted to, these bags behind you, we're going to send you off decked out in Point Park gear. So I want to make sure you all have that, some nice golf polos and wear the proud and t-shirts. And even if you're a golf fanatic like I am, even poker chips to mark your ball close to the hole. So we just wanted to say thank you so much. I mean, your time, your experience, everything. You add up the years of experience that these three gentlemen have, and it is just mind-boggling. And again, something that, again, I've been in higher ed for 34 years now. My dream was this. And you know, like they said, zig and zag, because you never know what's going to happen. And I love what I do. And these guys, I live vicariously through because this is the dream. But in this day and age, make the sacrifices, folks. It will pay off. These three gentlemen are proof of that. So, again, I know how busy you are on these days. Thank you so much.
Yep.
Thank you.